Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's your boy Izuku, aka Ninja, and I'm back here again with a different video than the one I've been recording for the past, I don't know, like 5 days, I think. If that, I've taken a break, so I don't think it's been 5 days. No, it's, yeah, 5 days, 5 days. So yeah, for the past week, well, 5 days, not a week, but whatever. For the past 5 days, well, last week, 5 days, like that whole 5 days, like Monday to Friday, all I was doing was Shadow Monarch Izuku or Shadow Monarch Deku. I don't know what I named it yet. But yeah, this one is gonna be different. So let me go ahead and get everything out of the way. I'm sorry about the background noise that is gonna be there. That fan up top doesn't really do shit, so yeah. So I got my fan on behind me. It's quite loud. My bed creaks and shit when I move. Well, not a lot, but since the microphone is so close to my bed, I'm pretty sure you can hear it. And I just grabbed my cover because why not? Who doesn't like to be both cool and warm? I'm weird like that, okay? I am not talking low because of circumstances. I am talking low because for some reason my voice decided to say fuck you and doesn't want to act right. So I'm talking a bit low. It's crazy because every time I go to record, my voice starts to fuck up. And then when it comes down to doing anything else that requires talking, like literally anything else, there is no fucking problem. It's only when it comes down to recording. Now I have my water, so just in case something weird goes on with my voice, I have water. This video is going to be way different from the ones I've tried a while ago when it came down to making a Naofumi series, text and story wise. I didn't really have a plan for them, but I did have a plan for them going into it. I just didn't have a long-term plan for it. So that's why I started doing vocals. That way I can change a piece of it while keeping it still going the same direction. Like, I won't change much when it comes down to text and stories. If anything, I change at all. But when I do, I'll correct it up in the vocal when I go to editing, since I start making the texting stories before I even post the first vocal, so that I can post the vocal, then post the texting story, and then keep going back and forth like that. Now, it does take me a while to do so I won't be posting every day regularly. Why did that come out so weird? Regularly. My bad. Yeah, so I won't be posting every day regularly. Again, it came out so fucking weird. Anyways, yeah, why am I restarting that phrase? Stop. Because, yeah, I'm not gonna start there again. Because it takes a while to fucking record, type out and find everything I need for the vocals. I mean, the texting stories, because I do a lot of shit in the vocals that my mind can think of. And I know I've seen the gift before. It's just when I need to find it, I can't find it. So I have to change certain aspects of it or just type it out. Yeah, and it takes a while to find gifts if you didn't know. Depending on the type of fighting gift, especially the ones I've seen, it takes a while to re-find them. That's why when I see cool gifts, I either download them on the spot or I save them. Well, try to at least. But yeah, for now, let's get into it, since I'm damn near 5 minutes in and I have nothing else to say. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to re-record that. I'm not gonna be posting everyday thing again for my main channel. But yeah, One second. All right. So yeah, we'll start off with Naofumi, not being born, but as a 10-year-old. As a 10-year-old, Naofumi would be a child prodigy. So much, in fact, that his parents were terrified of him. He, by the age of when normal babies could walk, he was already running, and by the time they were talking, he could sing and yell. He could do all of like Naofumi could do so much more than what normal kids his age should be able to do. And so by 10, his parents would be terrified of him. They would literally, well, were about to give him up for adoption. And they did, but they did. It sounded like didn't to me, so I had to, reset. They did end up selling him, but not through the normal adoption way. See, Naofumi never saw his parents as his parents, since they always saw him as an abomination. And so Naofumi would be sent with this rich family, and they would train him day and night until the age of 12 to be their perfect little assassin. You see, the rich families of this world were so different. They needed people to protect them. And Naofumi, being a mega prodigy, would be the best. And that's what they were hoping for. They also had a biological son who also went through this process. And their daughter, who wanted to do it, who at first wasn't allowed, but then her mother started training her. And so she's also a part of it. So, this way, when Naofumi goes, anyways. So, Naofumi would be so good, in fact, that he would need a nickname. And his hair would start to grow out to look like Feitan's, but he would cut it, saying it looked weird. Not saying Feitan's hair looked weird. Low key, that shit fire. But yeah, he would say that it was weird and it got in his way. But he would start to dress like Feitan. And but he wouldn't be, obviously. Like, Feitan is 5'1". And that's how old, I said that's how old. That's how tall 12-year-old Naofumi was, 5'1". Naofumi would start to get into anime and all this other stuff, but this wouldn't stop him from training. He would be able to decapitate a person with his bare hands, but he hated the rain. He legitimately hated the rain. So he started carrying around daggers with an umbrella. It didn't slow him down, but he didn't like carrying all the stuff together. So he ordered a sword umbrella, where, take the sword out of the umbrella. And he used that as a blueprint. He made his own umbrella. And it was able to fire off the sharp bit at like a genuine sniper bullet. And he could open it like an umbrella, but it could block bullets. It was so durable, in fact, that it wouldn't even dent at a sniper's bullet. No bullet could dent it. And that's because he worked with the hardest material he could find. And Naofumi would do all this other stuff. Like, the blade on his sword wasn't like a rapier, like a poker. It was a genuine, katana blade, or more like a straight blade, but for the umbrella. And you couldn't tell that it was a sheath. It looked like a normal umbrella otherwise, as Naofumi would never get caught. And the reason for this is, after he shot his the top of the umbrella thing, it would, once it made contact with the human body, it would explode into fragments. And those fragments would burn themselves by how fast they were going. They would legitimately liquefy. And you might be saying that leaves a messy kill. Sure, but you couldn't tell what killed them. You would think that the person swallowed a grenade. Like literally. That's how bad the fragmentation was. It's an explosion that sends the fragments out at such ridiculous speeds that it liquefies them. And they would never, I mean, they would always find it on the scenes, but they wouldn't really think much of it. It looks like they just swallowed a fucking grenade. They would, attribute this to a psychopath putting grenades down people's throats and then running hella far away. Never attributing this to a now 14-year-old Naofumi. And the rich parents were growing old. I mean, they were already pretty old, and that's why they needed, you know. And that's because other rich families were sending assassins after them. And you might be saying, what other rich families? Their own children. They wanted them dead so they could be in the will. But Naofumi didn't care for the will. He didn't care for money. Well, yeah, he didn't really care for it. It wasn't really his thing. He just wanted to watch anime, read his manga, and. And Naofumi would find this irritating that the people who were brought into this world by these loving old people that he had grown to love, he genuinely loves them, were trying to kill them. And Naofumi didn't really care whether or not he was on the will. He knew the two children who were also their assassins, at the table, would be in the will. He just didn't really care whether or not he was in it. And by the time Naofumi was 18, he would, the grandma and grandpa to him, but he would call them mom and dad. Well, yeah, he'd call them mom and dad. They would die, and like I said, he wasn't in the will, but he did have something in the will, his freedom. Naofumi was no longer in their grasp. They put in his will that Naofumi could leave, and the two siblings who had grown up together, they're twins by the way, they would ask Naofumi to move out with them since they knew their siblings would be after them. But Naofumi would say, I'll stay here. You two can go. Don't worry. If they come, all they'll find is an empty house with a bed and a couple of manga and the TV for watching anime and playing games. Plus, they won't suspect you two left, especially since you guys love this place. And the two would look down, but Naofumi would say, and don't worry, if they do come, or if they do send people, I won't die. And if you can't find my body, don't assume I'm dead. Trust me, if I were to die to people who sent hitmen, then I deserve to die. But if you don't find a body, then I'm not dead. So don't come looking for me. Just keep honing your skills and hope for the best. And I'll do the same. And the two would nod and cryingly leave. The next day, they would have a flight to, let's say, somewhere in Korea. No. Let's say somewhere in America, I guess. They went somewhere other than Japan, okay? They went somewhere other than Japan. And they would, eventually turn 18 2 years later, where they would be notified that their brother, Naofumi, had went missing. But they wouldn't be, obviously, since no one knows where they went. They were also labeled as missing. But Naofumi, they knew something was up since he went missing. But they remembered his words. No body, I'm not dead. And now we go to Naofumi, we go to Naofumi before he went missing. 2 years had passed, by the way, as Naofumi is now 20, and the other two are now 18. Naofumi would have been reading as if any other day he would not have slept. Naofumi is now 6'1". He is pretty tall, and well, is tall, but not not to be. Yeah, them black jeans hidden, 6'2.5", big boy. My fault. I got completely off track. Anyways, yeah, like I was saying, Naofumi would hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. But yeah, Naofumi would, like I said, it would be a day like every other. He would train, he would cook, he would eat, he would start reading manga since he had already watched all the anime he found intriguing. He would do a lot of things that were intriguing to him, but they weren't fun. He lacked enjoyment. And he would come across the book that he had been shipped called The Four Cardinal Heroes, and this one would be different. I mean, it would be the same, but something about it was different. It would talk about the sword, the bow, and the spear hero. But then it would talk about the hero of their own desires, a hero that you want to be. And Naofumi would say, if I were summoned to this world, I'd want my umbrella. That's it. I mean, my clothes would be cool to bring too, but my umbrella mostly. Since my clothes wouldn't have anything, I guess an ability that turned, but he wouldn't get to finish as he would be attacked. 3 bullets would fly through his window, and he would grab his umbrella, which was laying next to him on the bed, and he'd open it as he'd spin it as the bullets would be deflected into the walls. Yet no alarms went off, and this would be shocking as he would dash at the guy who had jumped through the window, and before he could even enter, his head would be cleaved off by Naofumi's blade. As Naofumi would kick the body into the guy who jumped at him with this dagger, as this guy would have came from a helicopter, as Naofumi would be labeled a traitor. A traitor by the 2 kids. But not the 2 that were, the 2 he were close to that went to America. Like I said, I'm going to say America or Korea. It's going to be one of those 2 each time. Now I'm going to just say America. Yeah. The 2 who went to America. It wasn't them. It was the firstborn 2 children. The first 2 born children from the grandma and grandpa. Or the only 2 people he called mom and dad. The oldest would be the son who would have jumped down just now, who would have tried to stab him with the dagger, only to stab into the dead body. As the girl would have a sniper, and a helicopter would fly off and circle the house as she would jump down and it would fly off. Now, you see, the 2 children were the only 2 children, and they never knew about the other 2 children. The 2 younger ones who are now 18. They would be shocked as, Naofumi would have nothing in the house besides the stuff he had there. And they would ask, what did he do? Why did he pawn off all the money? What did he do with the money? That's all they wanted. The money, the assets, the cars, all of it. Where is it? And Naofumi would say, I don't have it. I wasn't in the will. And they would say, you liar, you're the only one who would have been in the house with them. And we didn't see anyone else at the funeral. Why? Because Naofumi thought ahead. He told the 2, since they're definitely going to be in the will, they'd be after, the 2 oldest ones would be after them. And since the 2 youngest children had never been, known about, they had been hidden so well from their older siblings, who never came to visit them, by the way. That's another reason why they don't know. And the spies that they tried to get to come near the house would always end up dead by Naofumi. So they would assume that he's just hiding it, and they would try to kill him. And Naofumi would cut a bullet, but it would stab into both. Like it would stab into like once he'd cut it and cut across the top of his shoulder, and then across his hip. As he'd grit his teeth and he'd think, pain is so annoying. I mean, I'm used to bullets and stuff like that, but pain is such an annoyance. And he would think in the back of his head, if only there was a way that I could turn this pain into strength. He would start to think, and he would keep thinking on it, as the book behind him would start to glow. But he wouldn't notice this, as he'd be pissed off now. You insolent bastards, how dare you hurt me? But this wouldn't come out as normal. His whole language would have changed, and it would have been backwards. It would have been backwards in Chinese or Japanese. I'm pretty sure it was Chinese though. But it would come. No, I'm gonna say since it's now for me. It'd be backwards in Japanese, and they would understand it's backwards in Japanese, but they wouldn't understand what he said, as he'd keep going. I'll fucking kill you. You dare lay a hand on me? I'll fucking kill you. As he'd keep getting angrier and angrier, as this aura would start to come off him. Now, this aura in, Hunter x Hunter would have been Nin, but since, this world, it would be mana, and it would be fast. As this, magic, but, you call it the amount of magic you have as mana, or your capacity of mana, and you use it as magic. So, yeah. Why the fuck does my table keep moving? 1 second. There we go. And it's gone again. There we go. So, this mana would be very overpowering, as they would be terrified to see this black and red aura hugely surrounding him. As that's when he would say, I'll fucking kill you, I'll fucking kill you, I'll fucking kill you, die, die, die. As it would be repeated. As now he wasn't even thinking straight. He didn't have the calm, cool demeanor of the assassin he was taught to be. He would be pissed off. And it would only be because they were only thinking of the riches they could have gotten. I mean, sure, the pain hurt and all. They had been shooting into him, like non-stop. They had both been unloading into him while he was telling them to die backwards in Japanese. And they was like, he was not falling, and he would not keep speaking. Like, he kept talking, and he was eating the bullets as if they were nothing. They were getting scared. And the girl would radio into the helicopter, return, as it would start to fly over, and it would be over the house as they would drop a rope. But he'd say, hell no, you're gonna die. As he'd say, off instinct, pain packer. As this armor would have, this cloth-like armor would come over him. Once this would be around him, as this aura would fly up, and it would, as soon as it touched the top of the house, the top of the roof, which wouldn't take long, a miniature sun would come out, as it would engulf both of the siblings and the house. It would engulf the rope and the helicopter, as it would crash into the backyard with the guy who, like, the whole property would be on fire. This miniature sun would be so fucking hot that it was melting down even his umbrella, and the book would catch fire, as he would start laughing for the first time. He felt good about killing someone for the first time. And then the aura would vanish, and he'd get sucked into the book, as he would now be standing there. And Should I keep him looking like Feitan or? No, I'm gonna say he. Hold on. I'm a. Okay, not right now, but soon he's gonna start looking more and more like Feitan. But like I said, he had been keeping his hair in check, so yeah. He would arrive. He would be in this place, summoned into the book he had just read, but he wouldn't know this. But everything about this situation felt familiar since he had just read the book, and Naofumi's perfect memory would kick in. Wait, is this the place? Wait, so I get to kill monsters now. Oh, just great. But then he'd notice the other guys as he then noticed he's holding his umbrella. And he'd say, okay, this is my umbrella, but it's not. And he'd open it off instinct as his system, he would have two of them, by the way. The first system he would have, already looked at and, he wouldn't be impressed as this system only told him what skills he had. And at the moment, it only said Pain Packer. As the system would say, mana, it would say amount of mana, it would say Pain Packer, and it would say another one, but we're going to keep that in. We're going to keep that one wrapped up for now, okay? Now, well, no, it's going to say Pain Packer, and then it's Rising Sun, and then the other one under Pain Packer will keep a secret. Okay. So then, but that one would only show up when he'd open the umbrella. As, like I said, it'd be hidden from everyone. As he'd close it and he'd look at everyone as the three heroes, Motoyasu, Itsuki, and Rin, would be laughing at him, saying, wait, why do you have an umbrella? And at first he would go to speak, but then his hidden system would pop up in the corner of his eye. But it'd be on side of the, it'd be hidden under the flaps of the umbrella. As it would say, don't tell them about your weapon just yet. And he would be confused on why. And it wouldn't have been it's as if the umbrella was trying to tell him to keep it under wraps. As he would see that that normal variation of his umbrella is registered as a shield. So he'd say, I guess this is some type of shield. It says shield here. And they would be confused as they'd say an umbrella as a shield. As he'd say, I don't like rain, so I guess that's why it's an umbrella. And this would make them laugh even harder, but he wouldn't care, as he'd see that in the main system, which is hidden to everyone anyways, unless he wants it to be seen. But his hidden system isn't just there for, it's going to be two separate systems, but only for a little bit, don't worry. And his other system would say, it'd give a thumbs up emoji on it, as if it was alive. His system would be as if it were alive. And I'll answer your question. Wait, how is he freely talking to his system? As you'll see in a minute. So he would continue to go on his way. They would, do the same thing, explaining about the different worlds and everything. He wouldn't tell them anything about him. He would say that he was just a guy who used to watch anime and read manga. He didn't really play games, and he is pretty fit, but only because he used to work out and stuff. He wouldn't explain anything, really. And he'd say, plus, I used to fight with using an umbrella in my past world, so I guess that's another reason why I have it as a weapon. And they'd laugh at him and say, what do you mean fight with it? As he would walk up to Motoyasu, and he'd thrust it at him, but stop right before his throat. As he'd say, you see, an umbrella can be a thrusting weapon, and it can be a thrown weapon or a projectile, and it can also be a slashing weapon. And he'd say this as if hinting to his three different three different weapons in his umbrella, but the other system would tell him to stop, right? And now we're gonna go back to the other world, as we see the two siblings who would be at the old house, as they'd see it completely burned down, the grass scorched. They would see skeletons melted, like mostly melted. They wouldn't be fully melted since he was summoned into the book before he could burn them further. And so yeah, damn, I forgot what oh right. So the two siblings would say that it seems that something went down here. And, they would explain what would happen. Like, they'd get a rundown of what happened via a spy they had watching Naofumi. Naofumi almost killed the spy, by the way. He sensed them somehow and aimed his umbrella at him and shot it at him. But they would just barely dodge it. And then when it was about to explode, they would fall off a roof into a lake, hence surviving. And Naofumi, he sensed that. Well, he couldn't sense them anymore and assumed they died. So they kept watching him. And the spy would explain what happened. And then he'd say he found this on the ground. And this would be a tablet that Naofumi had. He was working on animations, as he had wanted to make his own anime. He was bored and had a lot of free time, and so he was starting on an anime. They would find a page of the book on there, as it would fade into the tablet without the spy knowing, and the spy would see it and say, "What the hell?" and fall over dead, as the girl would have killed him. Her name is Yuki, as the brother, his name is Alex. Alex would say, "Yuki, did you just see that?" And then they'd see and hear Naofumi talking. They'd hear his inner thoughts, well, just for a bit. And that's because he was letting his inner thoughts, be free. But obviously, people besides those two could not hear it. And they would see up to everything. They would type onto the tablet, telling him to keep his, everything on the wraps, his umbrella, all of that, right? And Naofumi would assume it's them since, well, he doesn't know how, but he just feels like it's them. And so at night, he would walk out, get some fresh air, and he would take this time to avoid all the peeping eyes that would, they would be watching the room. He would have flash stepped, my fault. He would have flash stepped onto the roof, and he would have hidden in a blind spot that could normally be seen, as he would be just sitting there. And the first thing he would think is, okay, how the hell are you two looking at me? And they would say, well, it's kind of complicated, but let's just say your life is now an anime. And he'd say, pretty cool, right? And they'd say, not really. Since you weren't ever registered as a normal person, or, have no type of anything in this world, yes, it's cool. But, and he'd say, but we can't hear your inner thoughts, meaning you're a thoughtless character here. But you're still the MC, so if you have any inner monologue that you're gonna say that's gonna be towards the, series, we're gonna need you to think it out loud. And he'd say, how in the fuck do I do that? And he'd say, well, firstly, I don't fucking know. Actually, you know what? Don't do it. Yeah, it'll make your character more mysterious and cool. It'll make it seem like you're a cold calculating type without actually thinking out loud. Like how normally when an anime character gets a zoom into their face, or they're alone in their thinking, you can hear their inner monologue. You, on the other hand, Nothing. Meaning, all of your thoughts can be blank, and we can just fill them in. And he would say, no, thank you. And they'd say, don't worry, we can hear your inner thoughts anyway, so us filling them in anyways wouldn't hurt. And he'd say, no, I feel as if my character shouldn't have any. I don't think you should put any for my character. Plus, I feel as if something bad is going to happen. And they would say, yeah, your second episode is called Betrayal. By the way, I don't know if this is the actual, thing. I doubt it, but yeah. And he'd say, Betrayal, huh? Sounds pretty cool. And he'd say, listen, if I'm a part of the anime and you two are speaking to me, does that mean they can hear your voices through the system as if you're a part of the anime too? And they would say, not really. We're like the animators. But to the people, they can only hear us talking to you, but they don't hear this since it's not recording currently. Since I'm assuming this is a part that's usually cut out of the series. So all information that happens at night when you're usually supposed to sleep is cut out, so it wouldn't be seen in the anime anyways. And he'd nod and he'd say, so this system with my actual powers and stuff can't be seen by the viewers. Well, my stats and stuff can't be seen by the viewers, but the one on this the system that goes to this world can be seen. And they'd say, exactly. He'd say, okay, great trade-off. And they'd be dumbfounded, but they'd instantly head back to their new base that they have in America. They wouldn't speak to him for the rest of that night, and he wouldn't care, as he'd sneak back into his room, into the shared room, lay down, sleep, and he'd, wake up in time for the next morning. Now, he'd get dressed in the fit you see now, since, that's the only fit he has. By the way, this fit is better than any armor that you could get in here. Yeah. And the reason for that is it grows with the wearer. So the stronger he gets, the more durable and tanky it becomes. And he loves this trade-off so much, in fact, that he loves now being the shield hero. And his thoughts would be able to be heard, as he'd be smirking about this. And then but it'd all be hidden behind his, like the collar mask thing that Feitan has. The thing on his face right there. Yeah. It'd be hidden by that. As the first thing he'd do is he'd keep... Damn, what was it? Oh, right. When they'd go to ask the people what team would they like to join, since everyone else has gamer experience in this world, and has some knowledge of the world, to what they think is more than Naofumi's plus, shield hero, they would choose the other three heroes, and Naofumi wouldn't care since he loves working by himself. In fact, he didn't even work with the other two. And him thinking this, since, they, like, the viewers of the anime up in the actual world would be able to see that, like, they wouldn't see, like, to them, everything that happened to, for Naofumi would be, just a part of the anime. And even though the house was actually burned down, they would say that the anime was based off a situation that possibly could have happened there in the house, since it was burned and charcoal skeletons, it's crazy. Burned bodies, completely incinerated bodies with charred skeletons on the ground. And so they said it's just a, anime type thing that happened. And since they made it back to America, the two would emulate his whatchamacallit into streaming series and all of that, since... Yeah, and they would be seen as animators, as they would be gaining riches and being able to send him money. See, money would transfer into gold in that world. So gold, silver, and copper. Copper would be like $1. Silver would be like, no, $1 would be, copper would be $10. Let's say that. 50 would be silver, and 100 would be gold. So every $10 would be copper, every $50 would be gold. Silver, and every 100 would be a gold. All right. So Naofumi would say, "Yeah, I'm fine with this trade off," and they would go to hand out the money, and the dad, obviously the king, would look at his daughter and nod as Naofumi would catch this, and his thoughts wouldn't be heard to the viewers, but his first thoughts would be, something isn't right here. Wait, wasn't today's episode called Betrayal? And betrayal it was, as the daughter would say, "I'd like to join Sir Shield Hero, this being mine," as she would offer to join him, but he'd say, well, go to say no, but the two would say, you're like, you remember, like, episode Betrayal, this has to happen, it's a canon event. And he'd fake a smile, which still couldn't be seen by his mask. They just thought he was actually smiling and thought his, shirt, his fit was weird. And so he'd say, "Yeah, sure, you can join." And his mouth, which they thought was smiling, was frowning. And again, not shown to the viewers. As his first instinct was, "I'll kill her." But then again, no. And he'd say, "Okay, what the hell? Y'all can hear all of my inner thoughts?" And they'd say, "Some of them." And it's kind of like a notification thing. If you're about to do something that's going to mess up the ratings, bad. And we get a red marker on our tablet, which is still connected to the whatchamacallit, but the tablet is just there to show, the tablet, now all it is his system, and they can speak through it by pressing a button on it at speaking. They can speak to him from however far away, as long as, the speaker is on. 1 second. Alright, I'm back. So, after this, my bad. So after this, the whole situation would go down. They, he'd take her, she'd take him all around. She'd take him to Erhard's, Erhard. We'll call him Erhard. I'm pretty sure. We're gonna call bro Big ER. I called him Big E last time, but I think I deleted it. I don't even think that video is ever gonna be shown. We're gonna call him Big ER, okay? Big ER. Or Big E Hard. Yeah, Big E Hard sound good. Yeah. So she'd take him to E Hard or Big E Hard shop. As E Hard would, obviously, offer stuff. And since he's a hero and he got more money, he would just get armor for her. As he'd say he didn't need it since his suit is armor. And she would just shrug it off, choose the armor she chose in canon, and, she was already thinking of ways to take his armor that he has on anyway, since even though she doesn't know what it does, she just feels as if it's special for some reason. So, Big E Hard. I was trying my hardest not to say Big E, because that's what I called him in the other one. Yeah, but Big E Hard, we gonna call him E Hard, bro. I'm trying my hardest not to call him Big E, bro. Alright, if I accidentally call him Big E, I mean Erhard, but it sounds weird coming from my mouth, so Big E is E Hard. Alright. So E Hard would, give her the same thing as canon, and he would see a sword in there, and he would go to grab it, and it wouldn't work. But on accident, he'd tap it with the blade part of his umbrella, or the butt part of it, the part that you hold, like this part. Hold on, this part. He'd tap it with that part of the umbrella, as he would gain a notification. Blade successfully copied. And he'd smirk and walk past all of the swords, touching the bottom of them with his umbrella blade. And I'm gonna say all of the blades turn into umbrella, like the blade types that fit inside his umbrella, right? And so all of this other, stuff would happen. You know, they'd go, oh yeah, he'd do the same with shields. He'd tap the umbrella, like the actual umbrella part, with on the shields, as it would gain the properties of them, but it wouldn't change the umbrellas. Like, it'd be the same umbrella. It wouldn't change the properties of it. But it would... No, I'm going to say every time... Alright, so his weapon is different. Every time he touches a sword, his blade upgrades and becomes stronger, and it gains the attributes of the blade without having to transform into it. And his umbrella just grows and gains extra durability. So he would ask Big Ehard, what's his strongest shield and sword, which would shock this would shock mine. I almost called her Melty. Her name is Malty. But he would ask him what is, his best sword and shield, and he would bring them out. It would be a sun sword, which is said to be made from a sunstone, which has the properties of the giant's fire, and they called it the sun fire in the giant's race. Basically, it's flames that come from the sun, well, the sun's rays, made into an everlasting fire. And he would tap it with the bottom of his umbrella, as it would grow in strength, like his sword would grow in strength and gain the properties. And he can freely switch between the properties. And then he'd look at the sun shield. It allows for him to absorb it allows for him to absorb flames it allows for the shield to absorb attacks, which makes the flames greater. And if you use it with the flame sword, it allows for the flame sword to, get stronger, because the flames transfer to the sword. And he would say, these cost 500 gold a piece, and these are my best works. I've had them hidden, but since you're a hero, you might have the money. And he'd say, nope, I just wanted to see him. By the way, do you have anything to do with lightning? As he'd say, yeah, wait, why are you asking if you can't afford it? And he'd say, no reason, I just wanted to see. And by the way, no one was noticing he's tapping these things with his things, as he was keeping eye contact with Ehard, which was keeping him distracted. And mine was just too busy thinking of ways to, get him to, get framed. So she wasn't paying attention. And so he would bring out the lightning sword and lightning shield. He would tap the lightning sword and shield, and then he'd say, thank you, I might return for one of these. He's obviously lying. But he'd say, can you appraise my outfit real quick? And he'd say, why? It just looks like standard clothes to me. And he'd say, alright. And he'd say, can you take me to some monsters? I feel like fighting something. And she would start to get, she would finally say, she'd say finally. And he'd say, huh? She'd say, sure, Sir Shield Hero. Damn, why is that so hard to say? She'd say, of course, sir. Why is Sir so hard to say quickly? Of course, Sir Shield Hero. There we go. It was just a false girl voice. My voice, since I haven't slept or eaten anything yet, my voice is kind of fucked up, so I can't say certain words very quickly, or it's like a tongue twister to me. or in certain goofy ass voices. Okay, so after this, she would take him to the balloon monsters, as obviously he would just poke them with his whatchamacallit, as she think that the point on his umbrella is the only thing he could use as a weapon. As one would show up going to attack him while he was collecting the scraps, as his system with the two on it would tell him to watch out, but he'd say he can sense all the things around him. He'd say whatever this thing is I unlocked in the other world. By the way, it was Nin and it transferred to mana or magic. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said it was magic, and it was, but it started off as Nin. When it first started, when they were shooting at him, it started off as Nin, but since the book was behind him already glowing, it changed into mana as it grew rapidly, since it was taking Feitan's Nin and flushing it into his body. And then it took mana that Naofumi would like you get when you originally go into the book, and since he's a hero, it would have been double a normal person's who. So he'd basically have Phaeton's aura times two, and it would cause his aura to be huge. That's how he burned down the house almost instantly. And yeah, why did I say yeah like that? Anyways, he gained the ability to freely use all of the Nin abilities. Like, he can use Gyo in his eyes and shit, look around. He can sense everything using Nin, since his range of Nin is very high. But since his mana, they can sense it, but they can't for him, since his is Nin. It's just transferred as mana. So he's constantly using Nin to feel everything around him, as the balloon monster would get close and it would jump on him and bite him, but his shirt would block it, as he'd swing his right arm so fast that he'd pop it before anyone could register that it was even on him, as they didn't even know it was balloon monster on him. They just see that it's one pops behind him, as he would have already put his umbrella behind him, as they assumed it had jumped at the point of the umbrella, since they called him stupid, the balloon monster stupid. So he would finish collecting them. They'd go sell them at the normal price, and they'd go to eat. As he would eat, she would offer him to drink, and this he would, but he'd leave before her, as she would be shocked, as the people around saw him leave. Right, he'd go upstairs, but then when she'd go to her room, he'd leave back down. He'd see the people, as he'd say, "I'm finna go hunting." I mean, I don't let her know I went out hunting, but if something goes down, I need you to have my back. As they'd be confused at first, but they'd say, "Sure, we can vouch for you," right? And so he'd go hunting, as in this, for some reason, like I said, now he's not under the watchfulness of, no, I'm gonna say he's still being watched by the people, right? Like, the enemy is still going, as the twins would say, "What is he doing?" As he'd say exactly what I said, "I'm finna go grind for levels." And he'd grind balloon monsters. He'd come across a one-headed wolf, like a normal wolf. He'd kill it. But then he'd come across a two-headed wolf. No, a three-headed one. The one, Yeah, he'd come across that one. I'm pretty sure it was three-headed. Yeah, he'd go across that bootleg Cerberus. It would jump at him, as he'd say, "Well, I already killed the one-headed version, and since you have three heads, I'm assuming you're stronger." And by the way, he already knows of the technique of dropping animal parts into or monster parts into the gem on his weapon. By the way, his gem is on his like on the. All right, hold on. Let me show you what the umbrella looks like. I just realized, low key, that I wasn't recording, and I don't know where I stopped it because I have been talking for a grip. So let's just say I start over. So let's try this again. He would leave the not. No, I'm pretty sure I didn't stop there, but let's say I did. He would leave the tavern after drinking with mine and then faking like he went to sleep. He would get the acknowledgement of the people that he's going to train, and they'd say they could vouch for him. That if he were to get in trouble or something, they'll just say he went out to grind levels and they got his back. So he'd go out, he'd kill more monsters. He would already know that his he could store monster parts into these black things on his thing. They're like the crystals, so he can put monster parts in there and his blade would get stronger and so would his shield. He wouldn't gain skill. I mean, he'd gain skills from them, obviously, but he wouldn't gain a different sword or a different umbrella. It all looked the same. Nothing would change. As the first thing that would come to mind after this is that he needs something stronger to fight. So he'd find this wolf-like monster and he'd kill it. He'd put it in there and okay, it's not really much. He didn't really care for it, but he'd put it in there anyway, as he gained an ability called it'd be called Ghost Blade. I mean, Dog's Ghost Blade. Basically, he could slice and it'd summon a ghostly dog. Like it'd dash at him and it'll attack them. And once it makes contact, it'll take a huge chunk out of their HP. Yeah. So basically that. And to normal people, it just do a lot. Like it'll scratch them or bite them, and they'll start to bleed. But it won't kill them. It's not a killing blow unless he aims for the neck specifically. Like he can swing at a certain part of the body, and it'll aim and attack there. It can be blocked and cut, but only by a ghost weapon. So only heroes with ghost affinity weapons or a different type of element, like it has to be a elemental blade or a ghost weapon to destroy or block it. So flames, water, earth, shit like that, it can block it, but only elemental stuff. And he would gain this knowledge as, his siblings would tell him. As he'd say, they are very helpful. And they'd be proud of themselves and, give themselves a little pat on the back. But that's when he'd say, all right, I guess I'll awaken now. They'd say awaken. As he'd say, sure. As now we're basically back to where we were. Now he'd click on his other system as the two would merge. But that's when his fingers would start to break and crack. As he would start to feel this huge amount of pain. His ribs would shatter. His arms, they'd go limp as the bones would shatter, as his whole body would start to tense up and tweak, as this would be still recorded on TV. On the anime, as the how the screen pans up away from them when they scream. Yeah, basically that would happen as he'd be yelling, as his pain tolerance would start to skyrocket, as then it hit max, as he would be laying there and then he'd just jump up, as he'd be standing there with steam coming off of his body, as he'd be pissed, as a 3-headed monster dog would come there, bootleg servers. It wouldn't be huge. It'd be like the one that he fought with well, not this version of him, but original Naofumi fought with Raftalia. Basically that, but he'd be pissed as he'd activate Pain Packer, as he'd say, "I'll kill you," in reverse Japanese, which would be translated to, like since it's automatically translated in every language, since it's put in reverse, they would since it's reversed, they would have it so that subtitles would show up. So even in English, it would be reverse English. Like any language would be reverse in that language, but they'd put subtitles at the bottom as he'd say, "I'll fucking kill you." As he'd be breathing hard, as he'd be pissed, as they'd say, so Pain Packer activates, like, like it would freeze and the announcer would come out, aka the screen. It would be the two, as they would have many avatars of them. As they'd start to explain Pain Packer, they'd say Pain Packer has two modes for now. The first one isn't, they'd say the first one, which is the one he's using, and we'll explain this one. They start to explain that the more pain he gets, the more, damage his ability will use. And the ability is called Rising Sun, as it allows for Naofumi to send out a miniature sun, and the heat is intensified by the amount of pain he had received. And since he had been basically tortured, I had all of his bones and stuff broken and destroyed, that monster is definitely not surviving. Now back to the show. And that's what would happen, as he would yell, "Rising Sun. Now know your place, you piece of shit." As his anger would be misplaced, as he would have assumed that it was that monster that did it. Since Awakening the Power said, definitely no pain. Like, legitimately, it said definitely no pain. I mean, definitely not a painful process. And so he believed it. I mean, he's not one to quickly believe people, but the system has been great to him. So he don't believe the system did it. He believed the monster did it to him. So he got to get it back. So in Pain Packer, he would activate Rising Sun, and it would activate. And when I tell you, this miniature sun would be so hot that it would completely fill the cave with fire. And it would start to become magma, to the point that the wolf would be dead with not even a single scrap of its bones left. It would have been a magma pool there, as he would start laughing sadistically, as he'd say, "Enjoy the pain you placed upon me, you piece of shit." And sorry about that. Yeah, so it would then he'd go back to normal. He'd leave the cave, since he'd see the sun is almost up. And since he's now cooled down, he would rush back to his room. And he'd sneak in through the window, lay in his bed, and get about 10 minutes of sleep, as the door would get banged on, but he would roll over and get another 30 minutes of sleep. The door would be kicked in, as in his sleeping state, his system would wake him. This would be the now combined system. This system now has the avatar of both his sister and brother, but it doesn't fully look like them. It looks like chibi versions of them, which are, like cutie versions of them. And the people just assume, since they are the authors of the anime, because they made the anime named it after them, since it'd be called The Rising of the Assassin Type Shield Hero. That's legitimately would be the title. And so he would be taken to the whatchamacallit, as he would wake up immediately, spin and push them off of him. And he'd land on his feet holding his umbrella as shown in the thing. Now he looks just like this now. He does not look like Feitan fully, but he does have, like, his hair looks like this now. And so he'd ask, "What's going on?" And that's when, the whole accusation about him touching mine would come to be. But he'd say he didn't touch anyone. He went out to level, and he came back early, went to bed, and was woken up 40 minutes later. And the villagers who would be outside, the shopkeepers that he had sold to, everyone that he had interacted with that night would vouch for him. But he would, the king would yell, "Silence. This guy did things to my daughter, and I will not stand for him lying. And if any of you keep lying for him, I will have you exiled." And he'd say, "Okay, what did I do to your daughter?" And she would say that he got drunk with her. He drug her to his room. And he forced her into his room, into his bed, ripped off her dress, and said he wants to see how many good things she can do for him. But she slapped him and he fell off. And then she ran out. And that only then did he leave to go leveling. As she ran to Motoyasu. And he would say, okay, and if all of this happened, why didn't you have me caught last night? If I did catch you, how did you get away? And thirdly, when did I even get drunk? I mean, sure, I had a drink with you, but last time I checked, that weak ass alcohol couldn't even put couldn't even put an old grandma to sleep. And trust me, the grandma I know, well, my mom, she can outdrink everyone here. She even outdrunk me, and I can't get drunk. As another panel would show up from, the twins, as they would tell about how he's resistant to torture, like all of that, alcohol, poisons, like nothing works on him. He doesn't feel pain, but pain is annoying to him. Well, he can feel it. It's just he's very resilient. Like, he's way too resilient to, stuff like that. So, like, pain doesn't do anything to him. Right? And so they would be, the story would continue, my bad. So that's when all of the sudden Motoyasu would go to rush at Naofumi, who would be very calm. And he'd open up his umbrella, as seen here. He would open up his umbrella, and Motoyasu's spear would be stopped dead there. And he would move it enough to where he could be seen just as much as seen on this picture here. Now, from now on, this is the picture I will be using. Okay, so, I'd be switching, it's crazy. Switching between, by the way, this is the sword, if you haven't, seen it before. Yeah, but, Motoyasu would say, how the hell? And he would spin it and then thrust forward as it would go back to being a normal umbrella. And then the spit, like the sharp bit, would hit him in the chest and he'd go flying back. As Naofumi would say, I don't give a shit who or what you guys are accusing me of doing, but don't ever attack me or I will kill you. Hero or not, I don't give a damn. And you, trust me, I've never been interested in women. Still to this day, I have been a shut-in. I have been a shut-in who did nothing but watch anime and read manga all my life. And if you think I'm gonna stand here and let you send my name through the mud and just say all this blasphemous shit about me, God, you have no taste. I mean, really, the night is still young? Is that the best thing you could have come up with? And what was the other shit you said? I pinned you to my bed and said, what? Actually, I don't care to remember. As then the episode would freeze once more. As it'd say, he has a perfect memory, besides when he's angry. Continuing. And he'd say, listen, I give not 2 fucks for why you guys hate me. Whether it's because I'm the shield hero, whether it's because I'm ugly to you, whether it's because I'm quote-unquote useless. But don't you ever think of getting in my way again. I'm in this world to enjoy myself. So if you try and stop my enjoyment, he would pull out the blade of his sword, which would shock everyone there. As he put the umbrella, as he'd let it go and it vanished. As he'd say, I killed every last one of you. And don't worry, I don't discriminate. Man, woman, I don't give a shit if you are a toddler. Get in my way, and I'll fucking kill you. And he'd hold out his hand as the umbrella would come back, and he'd resheath it. And Motoyasu would jump forward again, and not wanting to kill him just yet, since Motoyasu is the second strongest after him, and he's curious to see how strong the heroes are gonna be. Plus, he knows that the heroes are needed for the waves of catastrophe, so he can't just randomly kill off a hero, but he will send out a warning shot, a literal fucking shot, as he would send heat into his blade, which would heat up the tip of his this like that. It would heat up that, as he would press the button on the bottom of his handle of his umbrella, which would fire it off, as he'd say, "Sun bullet," and it would be the tip of his blade thing would be replaced by a new one, like instantly, and he'd be shocked, but he'd smirk, saying, "Okay, I can rapid fire these then, maybe." And he would gain a skill called, like, it would legitimately be called rapid fire. And the people who would have gave it to him were the twins, who can now give him skills. And he'd say, "Okay, this is intriguing." And they'd say, "Next time, we're charging." And he'd say, "I'll kill you." And they'd say, "Come on, you know you can't kill us from there." As he'd put his hand into the system, and he'd make a flame blade shoot at them. But he couldn't go through the system, obviously, but he can send things through there. And they'd say, "Yep, yeah, we get it, uh-huh." And to the people who are watching it, they just assume that it's something, like, funny that the animators made. And, everything would go on as canon, as he would leave. And besides the people who believe him, which were the shopkeeper, Ehard, I know his name is Erhard, or Earhard, however the fuck you pronounce it. Like I said, Ehard, and any of the other shop, like the people that you need. Besides them, no one else believed him, and he didn't care. He had made connections with the people he needed to. He made connections with traders, not traders, like traitors. Traders with a D. The people that make trades, that go to different cities, kingdoms, all that. Yeah, merchants. Yeah, merchants. He made deals with merchants. Like, he found a merchant, made a deal with him, sold him the fang. Like, I'm gonna just say conveniently, he got a skill that's called auto loot, which allowed for him to auto pick up a fang, which was the only thing that was left of the three-headed wolf. And you could tell it's one of their fangs, since it was the only type. Like, it's one of the strongest materials. And so he didn't tell him that he had another one that his umbrella automatically absorbed. But he would give them that one, and that's how he became, like, he gained a merchant license, and now he's known throughout, like, all the merchants. Like, every merchant knows of him, and they gave him connections to other people and other kingdoms, as they sent around that Naofumi is a good guy. Don't believe any rumors that may come through here. And so when the rumors of him being a rapist would hit different countries, it wouldn't do anything, since they don't believe him. They trust their merchants. And even the little people that do believe them, for some even the little people who do hear about this that believe them, it's not to where they'll instantly go, "Oh, we don't fucking like you. Yo, guards, come get him." Type, it's to the point where, I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe he did it, maybe he didn't. Like to that level. That's the degree that it's, like, yeah, to that degree. And so, yeah, from that, he would really lose nothing. And the king, who would think that Naofumi is now going to suffer, he wouldn't. No, the people wouldn't rip him off that he made connections with, and he wouldn't go to other people. He only went to people he made connections with, like the inn owner. He completely banned mine from going there. He banned Itsuki, Rin, and Motoyasu as well. They are not allowed to go there. But then Naofumi told him that maybe he should just, like reconsider that's good money. And instead of banning them, he can double the price. And since mine obviously doesn't know the price, since she asked how much it was, but I told her just to go get a table and I'll pay for it. She doesn't know how much it costs to, use it, right? And he tripled the price. He wouldn't double it. He'd triple it and then go even further as quadrupling it. But only for Motoyasu. The other two, he would just triple it. And Rin, who would, get the original price, he would just double it since for some reason he actually liked Rin. Like something about Rin was cool to him. Yeah, so Rin would, ask why the heroes are getting double the price. Well, he thought that all of them were getting double the price. He would ask, why are they getting double the price? As he'd say, my friend was betrayed because of, my friend is being ostracized because of you. So, I'll take it out of your pockets. I mean, you guys are heroes, so I can't really ban you, but I can go out of your pockets. And don't worry, a lot of people, and I do mean a lot of people here, know that Naofumi is good, and so they will be doubling the everything for you, so, or decreasing the things for you. So money earned from going on hunts decreased. Well, not all of them. There's some that the king has direct authority with. So you can go, have him sell your things and you get money that way. But you won't make your money through me and my friends. You will always spend double here. And since I'm the only inn in town, unless you get a house or an apartment, which I doubt you can get. By the way, they know what apartments are because of I'm gonna say, well, obviously other heroes have been to the world, so they know. Since she knew of slang from this world, mine I'm talking about. Yeah, and since the queen, the Philolio queen said old heroes, and it's obviously had been more heroes besides the main cast. So yeah, well, the main four that we see. So yeah, the king would give them just enough to get houses. Well, a singular big house together. And this singular big house would be able to be shared, like they would have sections. Like it'd be 3 sections and it'd be a huge, like it's almost a manor type thing, right? It's 3 houses all together put into one giant mansion like manor, right? And so they all have their separate, places. And their guild mates have their own rooms. And Naofumi would be walking around as he would see the slave trader. As he would go up to him and ask, yo, I'm gonna need me a slave about you. And the slave trader would say, sure, I owe you one anyways, since you did save my life. And by now, this is episode 3. And I would end this here, but I'm going to end this at 1:30. So he would go and he would see Raftalia, as he'd say, I want that one and one of those eggs. And he'd say, great choice. Wait, why an egg? As he'd say, they look cool. Plus, I heard Philolios can pull carts. I'm thinking on becoming a merchant. Need a Philolio. As he'd say, you're well informed, and yet you're so eerily calm. As he'd say, I mean, slaves are legal in this town, aren't they? I mean, legal in this world, right? As he'd say, fair enough. And he'd say, why this frail thing? You could have taken something of a higher grade. But he'd say, things of a higher level than yourself could easily break out of your command. And if they went rogue, I'd have to put them down. And I wouldn't want to put down my companion. Plus, this is a one-time thing. And I feel like having another swordsman on my side. Or someone I can teach that has a lot of potential. And I feel that that egg right there and this girl right here would have a lot of potential. And the slave trader, by the way, yes, I'm gonna say that Philo and the Philolios are already there. I know that they weren't, or if they were, obviously he didn't get it before. But I'm gonna say this is later on, and Raftalia is on the verge of like croaking already, and he would say that I'm gonna say that this is when the Philolios came in, and the other heroes are already stronger, but they aren't as strong as him because by now the other heroes are just now hitting level 15. He is already at level 35. And he would see that Raftalia, like he's been there multiple times, and he had a small healing skill that his two siblings would give him as they felt bad for Raftalia. Don't eat on my charger. Sorry, my cat tried to, ooh, shit. My bad, I hit my microphone, but my cat was eating on my charger, so I had to stop her. And then I ended up slapping my mic trying to throw my charger back on the bed. But, yeah. So he would have healed Raftalia with a small healing spell, which rejuvenated her. He would have given her food as well, and she would start to slowly trust him. And so she would anticipate his every arrival, and she would even start to greet him. And he would say, I'm finally going to get you out of here. As at first, he didn't have the funds to get her since he had to keep spending his funds doing other things, but that wouldn't be the case. Stop trying to climb up and get my charger. Stop it. My fault. I was goofing around with my cat. But, yeah, where was I? Oh, right. So, yeah, at first he didn't have the funds since he was always doing something. At one time, he came across the slave trader about to get robbed. He put an end to it, literally killed the guys with his bare hands, not even using his umbrella, which he wouldn't have. He would have put it inside in his inventory, which he can do. He could just put up his, he could just kind of put it up and use his hands since he doesn't need it all the times. And so he would rush at, the guys and decapitate them using his hands. He would then incinerate their bodies with flames as he would activate the smallest portion of Pain Packer. Why? He had allowed himself to be endlessly attacked by... Hold on. 1 second. My cat is playing with my microphone. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, after this, right. So, yeah, like I said, he owed him a favor, and this favor was giving him Raftalia, who the old man kind of assumed that he was going to grab Raftalia, but he didn't know why. And so when the batch of Philolios came, he bought, Philo and Raftalia. By the way, Raftalia has not grown yet, and obviously she would, as 2 days later, Raftalia would grow, like, instantly, as she would be the same height as in Canton. 1 second. Alright, I'm back. But, yeah. So, damn, where was I? Oh, right. So, after this, like I said, Raftalia would grow in just 2 days, as she would be the full height of what she was in Canton. Well, what she is in Canton. As Philo would grow exactly on the same, come out on the exact same day as Canon. So I'm going to say Raftalia grew in 2 days and Philo came out in a week. Now, Philo would grow rapidly with the two with both Raftalia and Naofumi getting stronger very fast, as Raftalia would be a natural with the blade, and under um under Naofumi's training, since he was very proficient with the blade, she would gain a skill called blade mastery, as she would obviously have a sword, well, have a long sword. She'd have a sword. And so when the first wave came around, they would easily protect Loot Village, as they would, the people would trust Naofumi more than the other heroes, as they had really no faith in the other heroes at all, as Naofumi would take care of all of the, monsters. He would clear all of them, and Raftalia would take care of the smaller ones, and she would grow her level fast. The heroes, who were all level 15, would take down the boss, as they would grow to level 20. But Raftalia would also reach level 20, as she had just taken down, I'll say, about 30 monsters by herself. And that's when Naofumi, who took down 100, would now be at level 40. Yeah, because I say he was at 35 before. So at level 42. Yeah, level 42. Why is my cat scratching stuff? 1 second. Alright, I'm back. So, yeah, what was I? Oh, right. So, yeah, he'd be level 42, as he would rush at, yeah, he would start to leave the village after, the knights would start to show up. But the knights would start to try and claim try to claim that they've saved Loot Village, and they deserved it. But Naofumi would say, hell no. Mm-mm. No, you didn't. And hold on 1 second. So, yeah. After everything that would happen, like I said, the knights would try and claim that they did everything, which they didn't. But secretly, one knight would see that, okay, this guy has he has a slave. Yep, they would realize that he has a slave. By the way, a lot of things are different in this one. They are faster, but the things that happen and at what rate and what time they happen are a lot different. You're gonna see why. It's a different timeline, basically, and so it's all out of whack. The timeline is, all out of whack. So, yeah. So after this, he would rush to, he would walk away, not caring. He'd say, sure, take the, I don't give a shit. I honestly don't care. I got what I came for. And he'd leave with Raftalia, who would not be as fast as him, but she was able to keep up with him. And Philo wasn't with them, since she's still growing. She's at a stable. And she sends them food every day so they can feed her. He sends them food so they can feed her. He would be notified that something happened to his Filoli, and he'd say, I'll check it out in a second. He went, pawned off all the things, then went and saw a big thing. Hey, is that my Filoli? As they'd say, yeah, it is. They would explain to him that they didn't overfeed it or anything. It just kind of grew that big. And so so being confused, he would say, so how did this work? How did this happen? What happened exactly? As they'd say, just grew. So I don't know. So he'd just start to take Philo since they didn't really have room to keep her. And Philo would be excited to pull his, his wagon, and he would be excited to have it. Well, have Philo be this big since she can easily pull his wagon. As he'd say, I need a name for you. And he would start to think. As he'd go, no, nope, not happening, nah. I'm not calling you that. And this would confuse Raftalia as he didn't say a singular name yet. He's disqualified a lot of names, and she would be confused on what names exactly are he getting rid of. And he would say, oh, don't worry about me. I was just thinking, I don't know. Hold on 1 second. My bad, I'm back. So, yeah. He would think, as he'd say, I'm gonna call you Phoenix. And Raftalia would be confused as he'd say, what about Natri? Yeah. I mean, it means Phoenix still, but... By the way, don't fact check me. I'm pretty sure that's... Pretty sure. Just a teensy bit. Just a little bit. Yeah. Also a little bit because I kind of searched up 8. Just a little bit. Yeah, so Natri. And so he'd say, do you like the name? And he'd see it just staring down at him with this look of excitement as he'd say, okay then, from now on, your name is Natri. And he would smile as the episode would start to fade out, as the two would come out on the system and say, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, folks, but this is where it's going to end. And I have to agree, because this now being the end, I appreciate you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Don't worry, any mistake I made while saying this, I will be fixing inside the editing process or texting story. I probably won't even edit a lot of these videos, but I'm gonna have to. So, yeah. Goodbye.